Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.
Everybody loves a man cave, and everybody loves to have a snoop into somebody else's private property, don't they? Well, you're about to see a man cave, along with some other collectible iron, on this week's episode of Classic Restos. You know, it's been proven in a laboratory with test tubes and Bunsen burners that inside the gene pool of every motoring enthusiast is a psychological disorder relating to a colorbond door. Yes, it's the element of surprise because of what lays behind them.
Meet Darren and Kirsten, comfortable in their humble abode near Albury, New South Wales. The unassuming location depicts every auto enthusiast's dream. There is no doubt it's a proven fact, maybe another one from that laboratory, that a shed means pretty well just as much as the vehicles that they house. Classic Restos captures these people. There's nothing pretentious here. A nice couple, a nice shed, and a nice charger.
Picked up the Valiant bug real early because my father was a panel beater spray painter, so he'd pick up a lot of Valiants, Falcons, do them up, sell them on. So he had a different car basically every month. And yeah, most of the time was Valiants. And so I picked up a real love for Valiants a long time ago. Mum liked the Holdens, but we didn't have many Holdens. Yeah, I remember he had a couple of Chargers. There wasn't many Chargers in amongst it because he's a family man. So we had two Chargers, and Mum's parents used to live out at Walla, a country town. We'd go and visit them, come back country roads, night time, backseat of the Charger, looking up at the stars. The back window leans over the top, and I don't know, it's just, yeah, something about the Charger just really stuck with me. And always wanted one, but my first few cars were always Holdens, and I was working at a fuel depot in South Albury, and this guy'd come in once every 2-3 months, put $10 worth of petrol in it. Not much, but you could hear it coming from blocks away. And first time I saw it, I just fell in love with it. And then after that, every time he'd come in, I'd go, "Someone, how much you want for it? When are you going to sell it to me?" Just hassle him every time he came in. And yeah, one day he turned up and he's gone, "So you still want to buy that car or what?" I'm like, "Oh, you serious?" "Yeah." "Well, yeah." So, you know, straight away I had a GDR Tirana that I used to run around in. Loved that car too, but yeah, put that up on the market. As soon as that got sold, I'm like, yeah, forked over the cash for it. Probably paid too much for it, but had to have it. It was one of those things. I've tried to keep it pretty much how I fell in love with it. So I haven't changed the look of it that much. The colour was the same. It was a Holden Glacier white, black Charger stripe. Visually it looked the same way. I put different wheels on it. Mechanicals all underneath it. I've turned every nut and bolt in it basically. Upgraded the diff, had the tranny rebuilt. Motor's been done a couple of times because I broke it a couple of times. But had the big tank in it when I bought it. So yeah, all the good RT stuff, quick ratio, steering box. I've just sort of fixed everything up that it had because it's a car I fell in love with, so I didn't want to change it too much. And who wants to mess with the classic lines like they have? I was lucky enough to get a Charger that had a 340 in it. I'm not sure exactly what it came out of the factory with, but there wasn't many options on the compliance plate, so I'm guessing it was a bog stock 215 or something like that, column shift type of Charger. But yeah, 340 is definitely the pick of the V8s as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, some people might disagree, but yeah, 340s are always the performance ones. They're always the big block beater, as they used to call them in the States, that sort of thing. Always had the performance package with 340s. In Australia, all the other V8s were sort of a little asthmatic with the 2 barrels and that sort of thing. And 340 actually got the 4 barrel, but probably not as punchy as the US ones that sort of by the time they came along. It's all old school, iron heads, forged pistons, solid lifter cam, stock bottom end, had a bit of port work. It's nothing overly fancy. It's got an aftermarket Edelbrock intake, air gap intake, big Holly 750. Yeah, so she breathes all right, runs pretty good. Pacemaker headers and exhaust cut off at the diff, so she makes a bit of noise. Three and a half high stall in the 727 transmission, and it's got a Dodge Phoenix 8 3/4 diff in the back with a Richmond Lockrite centre. It's all basically E38 inside the car. Put a few automatic gauges in there, but I've tried to keep everything else as original as possible. Still got the factory dash, steering wheel, column, all the other stuff. Everything. Back seats still factory stuff, door cards, all that sort of thing are all factory. Yeah, Wodonga Chrysler Club, been a member there for, feels like a long time. It's got to be at least 15 years anyway. Been a family club. Kids love getting out in the car on the club runs. Daughter Jessica, son Jackson. Jackson being a little bit older, I think he's fancying, that he's going to end up with the car and, take his girlfriend for runs, but we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, no, got a call during the week from Rod Taylor and, expressing that Fletch was coming to town and was going to do a show and, would I like to be part of it? And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't even a second thought. So yeah, pretty stoked and feeling pretty privileged that Classic Restos is in my house, in my shed. Yeah, looking at the old Valiant. Yeah, so here's my 71 Charger.
I spend a lot of time out here. The RT Charger's the real deal, an E49. Remember A Charger? I've always got projects on the go, so Shannons' laid-up cover helps protect my restorations. I'm Mopar through and through. It's a passion Shannons understands. I wouldn't insure my cars and bikes with anyone else.
Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
Hare & Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare & Forbes has the range.
How awesome was Darren's 71 VH Charger? Beautiful car, and a big thanks to David Graham from the Albury Wodonga Chrysler Club, and of course Rod Taylor organising guys just like this. How are you, Arnie?
Good, thanks, Fletch.
That's right. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, wonderful to be here.
Classic vehicles out and about around the countryside. Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
It doesn't, no. It's a great day.
You've got a very special car here, and you'll find out in a moment why it's so special. As soon as I heard this story, I just had to have a chat to Arnie. 1935 Chrysler, and it's been in your family quite a long time, right?
Yes, grandfather bought the car in 1947, and it's basically been in the family all that time.
Isn't that special?
Yeah.
Okay, now we look in the back of the car. The first thing we're going to talk about are the wheel covers, these spare wheel covers. Now, who gets up of a morning and thinks of spare wheel covers? Well, not a lot of us, but when you hear this is quite extraordinary. When you told me this, it's unbelievable how these returned back to the car. You want to share that with us, Arnie?
Grandfather bought the car in 47 in Albury. When he had finished with it, I ended up purchasing the car in 1976. In 1977, there was an ad in the local Border Mail paper for mid-30s Chrysler wheel covers. So I rang this fellow up and he said he had obtained these wheel covers from a clearing sale just north of Albury. Turns out they were the original wheel covers off the car.
How extraordinary is that? They went away from the vehicle, then came back. They were meant to, Arnie, weren't they?
Yeah, they must have been, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what do you say about that? Now, obviously, knowing your grandfather as well as you did, if he was around now, how would he have reacted to knowing that?
I think he would have been very surprised, actually, because they were never on the car while he had it.
When you're a little bloke, what were your memories of this vehicle?
Yeah, I remember the vehicle. Grandfather actually didn't drive it all that much. It was mostly his sons, because he was more a horse and cart man. I remember going to Melbourne in it when I was about 7. That was the only trip that I ever went in.
That would have been a big trip.
Yeah.
Although here we are in Albury, around 3 hours from the Melbourne CBD, but totally different story back in those days.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah.
I think it's amazing. You can see why these cars are popular for the brides. The legroom in the back of these vehicles, a lot of these vehicles from the mid-30s have this same feature. You had to have an LTD back in the 70s to kind of get that sort of legroom. They were enormous in back, weren't they?
They are. There's a lot of leg room in the back of them, and the car has done many weddings.
I love the way the car's upholstered. As soon as you open the doors and look inside, it's like looking almost into an old theatre. So Art Deco from that period, and we see the hood lining that's obviously had some moisture there with some stain over the years. But hey, who cares? This is what is making this vehicle for the age that it is, 1935, and you're still out driving around in it today. That's just outstanding.
Yeah, it's never let me down.
What power is it, Arnie? What's up front?
It's a 6-cylinder flathead Chrysler motor, 27 horsepower, does about 17, 18 miles a gallon. And I think
Well, that's not too bad.
I think the gallons must have been bigger in the old days, because they always reckoned it always did 25 miles a gallon, but it never has while I've been driving it.
It was back in the days with these cars where if young blokes got them 10 years later, they'd try and put a second carby on them, or they'd have an open exhaust, and that would have been deemed as a hot one.
That's right. That's correct, yeah.
And that dashboard. Oh, again, we're back in this Art Deco period where the aesthetics of the car, the big steering wheel and those gauges in the dash. It's well, of course, it's like nothing that we buy today. It's just an era so long ago.
Yes, and the dash was always good in it, because the car was always kept in a shed, and the gauges and things have never been restored or anything like that.
I'll see you at the next Chrysler on the Murray too.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, definitely.
Now, just speaking of Chrysler on the Murray, now you've obviously been going to that for many years. There's no excuse for you to say no, because you live too close to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I've missed one. I haven't always worked at them, but I don't think I've missed one of them.
Yeah, the guys, they do a great job, don't they?
Very good, very good. Very well run.
And to think too, one of the smallest car clubs in Australia, yet packing the punch with one of the largest shows.
It is, yes, yeah. It's a pretty good effort from the few members that we have. Yep. And it's been a successful show for years. Yeah.
Chryslers on the Murray for 2021, and it's marking
50 years of Charger.
50 years of the Australian Charger, eh? Half a century. It almost seems hard to comprehend, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah. Who would have thought all those years ago when you say, hey, Charger?
Yeah, the old black and white TV ads. Good on you, Arnie. On the banks of the glorious Murray River here in Albury. Wow, what a backdrop. And thank you so much again, Arnie, for bringing this 35 Chrysler along. And also a special thanks to Rod Taylor, the Albury Wodonga Chrysler Club, for making this episode happen, rounding up a few guys. This guy here's one of them. So, Arnie, take care of yourself, and thanks for coming along.
No worries. Thanks, Fletch.
You're welcome.
The front end was designed by Wodonga Chrysler when he worked for, I think it was Cadillac. It was it's an independent suspension in the front. Cadillac wouldn't use it, so when he formed his own company, he used it in this model. The gear ratio in the car was quite good. Just a 3-speed transmission. and yeah, it gets along that, anything from 80 to 100 k's an hour quite comfortably. It's quite well geared, really. Considering the roads that were around when these things were built, you probably couldn't do any more than 60 to 80 k's an hour anyway. It's a very comfortable car to drive. It's very easy to drive. It goes well. It's just a pleasure, really. It's I don't know, it gives me goosebumps. Just knowing that it was my grandfather's car, and it makes me think about it. But I'm pleased to have had it. And I suppose my son will get it one day. Yeah, I really love this car. I've had it for that long now, I can't get rid of it anyway. And it is in memory of my grandfather, whom I miss. But yeah, I really love the car. Classic cars mean so much to a lot of people, and I'm living the dream.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannons understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannons. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
Moving through today's episode, thanks to the Albury Wodonga Chrysler Club. How are you, John?
I'm great, Fletch.
That is good. Your location here, we're now at Corowa. Gorgeous 61 Newport behind us there. The bridge has a glorious backdrop. They used to race these cars. They used to beach race these cars. Racing accolades back in the early 60s of these cars. A big full-size car. That never came against them. These things were movers, weren't they?
Well, with the 413 in it, they could make 500 horsepower fairly easily, and strip them out, and they'll go,
And here, 361?
Yeah, just a small, big block.
Just small. When you think of early 60s of what we had here in Australia, respectively, 361 cubic inches, that was huge compared to our Holdens and our Falcons and our Valiants that were getting around at the time.
Well, it was a truck motor, and it carries a thing that's as heavy as a truck.
With a few little luxuries. Now, let's start on the interior. What an opulent example of grandeur. What a beautifully designed car. Now, you did say before we started the chat that it's the base model, correct?
Yes, it is. It would have had just vinyl inside, but most of the fittings are the same. They just tarted it up with bucket seats and a few other odds and sods inside, air conditioning, and well, they've all got power steering, I think, and this is an auto. Very few manuals ever made.
The epitome of style, Virgil Exner, back in the glory days there in styling. We look at this dash. Now, just tell us about the dash. Now, the shape, the doming, the design of the dash, was this the last year of that shape?
No, that continued on into the 62s, I believe. It's the electroluminescent, which they carried through even until the early 60s. If you've got a big car, you probably find they're electroluminescent.
They ran a fairly high voltage through the dashboard, didn't they?
Well, you don't be poking around your fingers underneath the dash unless you know what you're looking for. About 250 volts or something.
Wow. So you just feel around by zap?
Yeah, sort of.
When you found the car, John, how was it?
It was a typical Chrysler that had been imported into South Australia. It was complete, had all the chrome, had all the fittings and all the bits and pieces in it. Hadn't been really knocked about.
The bright work's nice?
Yeah, all stainless steel. Makes it easy. You can panel beat that to the nth degree. Yeah. And if you can get somebody who knows what they're doing, it really brings it right up.
Well, the thing is too, you've got substance, you've got metal to work with, haven't you?
Yeah, well, try and pick up one of the front or rear bumpers, you'll know what metal is. Yeah.
Speaking of the bumper bars and the style out around the back of these cars, they were on their own, weren't they?
Yeah, that's what I liked about them. It was, I'd always wanted a car with fins, and I've got one.
Congratulations to you. And on that note too, I think the fin's accentuated by being a two-door car. I mean, the fin starts in the centre of the door and just keeps on going. It just keeps on going off into the paddock, doesn't it?
Well, the next model, the 62, they actually removed the fins and they just put a straight guard on it. But when you actually look at it side on, it looks like a ute. It doesn't have any style whatsoever. You can't have two halves of two different cars. And that's what it looks like. You know, this was designed to be Virgil Exner's rocket ship. And that's exactly what it looks like.
Imagine the excitement back in the day of turning up in the drawing room to design these cars. And technically, there would have been days at 4 o'clock that afternoon. You would have had a shape on the drawing board that you possibly wouldn't have had any idea of at 9 o'clock that same day.
Well, you've got to remember that Exner was with Chrysler for quite a few years, and he started his designings of these sort of in the 50s, 55, when they started to get this forward look, and that's that speed while standing still look. And Chev had the same sort of thing. The 57 Chevs, if you look at them, they're very similar. Everyone went for this after he started it.
John, I want to thank you so much for turning up today to Corowa here in New South Wales and giving us an opportunity to get up close and personal with this gorgeous 61 car. These are the types of cars, obviously, that we don't see on the road every day. They are classics, and boy, you've got a beauty here, John. Oh, thank you very much.
No worries, Fletch. Thanks for coming.
In the late 1950s, American actor James Gregory did a promotional film explaining the outstanding features of these sensational forward-look cars for Chrysler. John has another 6 Chryslers and they're all insured with Shannons. And on that note, why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat to see what policy suits you best on 134646. And keep in mind as well, the Shannons Club is awaiting you. For more information, visit shannons.com.au.
I've always loved the Chryslers with fins, and I had the opportunity to buy one. Admittedly, it was a bit of a wreck when I bought it, and the wife wasn't too impressed when I dragged it home. With perseverance and effort and lots of money and dedication, it's turned into a real gem. It's been great to be able to do it. It's one of those things that you can never afford when you're young because you have a family, you have a career, you're chasing the corporate dollar. But we retired from Melbourne and came up here, bought a motel and made enough money, and I decided that it was time for me. Not excluding the wife, but me. And we had the wherewithal to do it. So I thought, why not? Yeah, I've always been mechanically inclined. I've always loved cars. And when I got to a stage where I could afford it and have the time to do it, I took it on. And it's a great, keeps the grey cells, as Poirot would say, the grey cells active. To go over to the shed, achieve something, and come back a rested, relaxed person who the wife can talk to, it's a great thing. While you've got a car, you don't need a men's shed. And anyone who hasn't got access to a car or a men's shed as they get older in life is missing out an awful lot. It's not good for the mental attributes. I always get into the car with a feeling of intrepidation because I've built it myself and I know what's gone into it. When you put the key in and you turn it and you think, is it going to start? Once it fires up, you think, that's great, we're ready, we're off. Because you have a mechanical bent, you're always listening out for the odd noise or some squeak or some noise that you haven't heard, and you're watching all the gauges. But it's just the case that this is your baby, and You just want to know what's going on and you don't want anything to happen to it. Yeah, this is my 61 Newport. I really love it. And I've got another Chrysler at home that I can work on as well. So I'm not going to be stuck for things to do.
Well, there you have it. That's a wrap. On today's show, we've had Darren, Arnie and John with their sensational Mopars in the Albury, Corroy area of New South Wales. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au.
Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.